Aho, ladies, gentlemen, gamers, and fellow gacha enjoyers. I have a little bit of a new video today. You can see we're not on Genshin, we're not on Star Rail, we're on one of the newest gacha experiences on the market right now. A little hot one too. Wuthering Waves. And here we can see the main character, Rover. So this video is going to be a little bit of a dual combination video. So obviously we're on this screen and you could see kind of my resources in the top right there because we are going to be doing, surprise, surprise, a rolling video. Although you probably already knew that from the title, probably, depending on what I name this. But it's not just going to be a rolling video. It's also going to be my opinions on Wuthering Waves. Wuthering Waves is decently new, and for a long time, especially with what Hoyoverse, aka Genshin Impact, has been doing, a lot of people said this is the Genshin killer. This is the thing to finally murder Genshin, to put it out of its misery, or to get it off of its ass and finally have it start doing meaningful updates. And I'm kind of here to review that. So I waited for a while to do this video because I wanted to give the game a fair shake, which I don't feel like I truly did yet because, you know, gachas can be somewhat expansive and I go typically very slow. I like to enjoy myself. But I finished the story, at least the main story that's in the game, which isn't too long, and I've played the game for a decent amount of time. So I didn't wish at all yet because I wanted to save it purely for this video. But until we get to the wishes, we're going to make this an opinion video on the game. So I have a whole document where I wrote down a lot of things, and I'm kind of just going to read it out with some context. So some stuff might repeat, some stuff might come back multiple times, obviously. I don't really remember what I wrote and when, so I might have rewrote it a couple times. But either way, this goes from the beginning all the way to the end because I beat the story yesterday. So I'm going to kind of describe the good, the bad, and the ugly of Wuthering Waves, from what I feel. So the first thing, now I'll be honest, right? When I heard of this game, I thought, you know, oh, this is the Genshin killer, haha, yeah, right, big jokes, you know, big jokes all around, pretty funny. And I thought this because Genshin Impact, because that's the main thing it's going to be compared to. I might bring up Star Rail a little bit, probably not too much, but the main thing that it's competing against is Genshin Impact. And there's a lot of very obvious reasons why, especially when you actually play the game. Excuse me. Not to say it's a Genshin clone or anything, but you can definitely tell that Hoyo has basically set the stage for all the gachas on the market. A lot of stuff that Hoyo does has basically become commonplace. You can almost treat them kind of like the Souls franchise. Dark Souls really defined the Souls-like genre. It's literally named after Dark Souls. And Hoyo kind of did the same thing with gachas, in my opinion, with Genshin. Because a lot of the systems, a lot of the menus, a lot of just the ways the game are, what you farm for, how you do it, how it's done, the general way of gachas go, at least open world ones, is very much dictated and taken inspiration from Genshin Impact. Now again, when this first got revealed, I basically knew nothing of it. I didn't really hear about it. I didn't really think anything of it at all. Now, this is where, as time went on, as it got closer and closer to release, I kept hearing more and more buzz about it. Wuthering Waves, Wuthering Waves. And a lot of Genshin creators were saying they were going to try it. Some of them were saying they were going to move over to it. Some of them got fucked by the Genshin Impact Creator Program, and they said, okay, well, I basically have to do this now as a full-time job. So they kind of moved away from Genshin. But Wuthering Waves was getting more and more hype. And a lot of people, again, were saying, oh, this thing's going to kill Genshin. And again, Genshin, for all intents and purposes, is pretty fucking shitty, I'll be honest. At the time when it came out, it definitely had a novelty factor, and I will be the first to admit that. The first time I played Genshin, I actually really liked the exploration, I really liked the game. The lore was okay, you know, it's Mondstadt. You know, it was the beginning. It wasn't crazy. And that's something we're to go into very deeply with Wuthering Waves here, but you know, the big part of the thing was the exploration of the world. It was new for the time, it was novel, and it felt good. It actually felt good and rewarding to explore Mondstadt in the beginning. Now when new regions come out, I explore it, I guess, kind of just to see the cool places, but the novelty kind of wear off for me at this point with Genshin. I might just be jaded, I might be older, Genshin just might be not sparking joy anymore, who knows, right? But the same feeling I had when I first started Genshin, and I was shocked by, doesn't really bring, you know, Genshin doesn't really bring that anymore. But despite it not bringing that, Genshin, despite how shitty it has now become compared to all the other gachas out there, even its sister game, Star Rail, which is leagues and leagues above the game, remains dominant to this day, and I really, really barely understand why. Games like Fortnite exist, and I understand why they make their money. Now, granted, once you're established, you're established. It's the same thing in the streaming realm. Once you have viewers, once you reach a certain level of fame, you pretty much can just coast on your laurels for the most part. Gaming, it's a little bit different. You kind of do have to put a little bit of effort in, but once you reach a certain point, it becomes a lot easier to remain afloat. Now, Genshin, I feel like no matter what they do, because they barely listen to the fans, I feel like, in ways that we actually want. Now, granted, we might be the minority, and this could go into a whole series about, you know, what is the best. Is it best for casuals? Is it best for whales? I don't want to go into that because that's going to make the video long, and it's going to be too much about Genshin. But either way, Genshin basically, excuse me, is the exception to a lot of things. So already I was thinking there's no way in God's green earth, or well, not so green earth anymore, that Wuthering Waves is going to beat this game. There's no way it's going to kill it. But the closer it got, the more I started doubting that because I started hearing a lot of stuff about this game. And eventually I caved and I was like, you know what? It's out. I didn't play it on day one, thankfully, and I'll explain why. But eventually, after a couple days, I did end up playing it, and I was like, all right, you know what? Let me give this a fair shake. Let me actually make some YouTube content. Here we are. And let me see, because, I'm pretty stuck in my cyclical ways, and I want something new. And I'll be honest, the first thing that I felt was surprise. When I first played Wuthering Waves, I was very surprised. Now, that surprise didn't last, and that could be a good thing or a bad thing, but let me just say this. Here's the first couple of notes I wrote, and this was coming off of a new novelty high. Typically, when I play games with low, and I have low expectations going in, and those are shattered, I'm very giddy in the beginning. So a lot of these are with rose-tinted glasses, kind of. But I'll say the little notes I wrote. So the first thing I ever wrote on Wuthering Waves was it feels a lot snappier. And this is something that I think is remained true for the whole game. I think Genshin is kind of old now. Now, it's not too old, right? It's a couple years old. I think, what, 4 years old? At least? Three, 4? I think it's 4. I believe Genshin's about 4 years old, around there. And the game feels a little slow. It feels a little sluggish. Now, one of the main things why Wuthering Wave doesn't feel like that is obviously because it's modern, but also because they have a different movement system. The movement system absolutely astounded me. I wish and I pray that Genshin one day adopts this movement system, but much like they don't listen to us about adding more late game content, which I think they're finally doing, and I'll explain that too. I doubt they'll ever add this movement system, but I personally think of all the gachas open worlds I've played, which haven't been much, granted, I think Wuthering Wave has the best, at least most good feeling movement system thus far. Now, Project Mugen, another gacha that's coming out that's supposed to have crazy ass movement systems. That's like a combination of GTA, Spider-Man, and God knows what else. That might just blow everything out the water, and I'm really, really excited for that too. I'm basically a gacha gamer now, I guess. But this game, compared to Genshin, absolutely beats the dog shit out of it. The animations, the whole feel of the game, it feels very, very smooth. And I kind of want to show that here now, just to, since we're in game, right? So I can run around, right? One of the first things that's amazing about this game is running, unless you're in combat, does not take up stamina. In Genshin, it takes up stamina, and it really makes you think, why? Now, there's other movement systems in the game. There's a lot of tools you get here that can help you move around the map. Now, granted, these aren't everywhere, but you can dodge in the air. You get, I feel like, a decent amount of stamina for what you're supposed to do. You obviously have a glider. There's a lot of similarities between Genshin, but the biggest thing that I think is amazing is the way you climb up stuff. Look at this. I just scaled a wall, a vertical 90-degree wall, by just running at it. And I got stuck on the lion's tail there. But anyway, you can scale up stuff pretty fucking easily and pretty fast. And the whole mantling system, the whole I just hopped up that thing, it feels very, very clean, very smooth. And you can see just from me running, right? I think the option of not having to have sprint be consumed when running freely, when you're not in combat, is one of the greatest decisions ever. And for an open world game where you want to explore, you want it to feel good, this is one of the best things ever. I cannot glaze or stroke this enough. I really, really can't. This movement system is amazing. Now, you could obviously do the double dash here, right? I don't know why, but in every gacha, you can always do the double dash. I don't know why you can't do triple or single, but it's always double. But the movement system here is absolutely amazing. You can go from the side, you can just go up. It's amazing. And there's special little animations they have for if you have to mantle something that's a little bit overhead above you. I don't know if I can have it here. Maybe right here I can get it, but let's see. Oh, shit. But the movement system of this game is absolutely amazing. Yeah, look. Okay, well, fuck. You couldn't see it too well because my camera zoomed in, but... And we'll get to the camera too, but there you go. You kind of do a little flip. There's little custom animations for stuff, which is absolutely fucking amazing. Like, I really can't blow it enough. It's so fucking good. Now, the visuals as well, as you can kind of see from the game, aren't as bad as I thought. Now, obviously, again, this is a more modern game, but it really has to do with the theming and the color palette. And I thought I was going to hate it. When I initially saw things in this game, I thought it was a little too gray. I love vibrant colors, which is why I think Star Rail is #1 in looks for me. Even above Genshin. Genshin is second, but Star Rail's first. But I like vibrant, popping colors, and I thought this game was a little too gray, but it's actually not that bad. It's not as popping as Star Rail, obviously, but it is also pretty good. Now, another thing that I noticed was the music. The music is also pretty decent. Now, there's a little bit of a theme here with the music that we're going to get into, but everything feels essentially good for the game, mostly. Even the loading. The loading feels good. The loading feels faster. The game just feels lighter. It feels like a more modern game than Genshin. Genshin, after going from this to Genshin, it feels more clunky, right? So again, the feeling, the movement and all, it just seems a lot better. Genshin feels slow. This feels fluid. And again, the animations for running and going up stuff, it really reminds me almost of like old school PS2 era games where there was an Incredible Hulk game that was free roam where you could do this, and Prototype. You could do this in Prototype. When you unrestrict people from movement in open free world games, it just feels better. And in Genshin, it feels like shit. To climb up things, it feels like fucking shit. Now, granted, they've added things to kind of help with that, similar to this game where you have the little grapple hook. They have that in Genshin too in like every fucking region. But that's just like, in Genshin, you kind of need it to not feel like ass. In this, it's more of like, hey, you can get here a little bit faster. It doesn't feel required. And sometimes I don't use it just because I like traversing. It feels good. Now, maybe it feels good because Genshin restricted us. Who knows? But we're going to get a little bit into the ugly. So, you might have heard a little bit from the music, but the music and the whole general theme of Wuthering Waves is very, let's just say, Asian. And this is something that I often get memed on live at Twitch TV/Tecnics channel when I stream this. But, this is the general trend for gachas, at least for Hoyo games. I'll keep it restricted to Hoyo games, because stuff like Fate is kind of divorced from all of them. But Fate, or not, sorry, not Fate. Hoyo games, Star Rail, and Genshin, they have a formula. Now, the formula in Star Rail and Genshin is the first region is very neutral. The first region is kind of, anyone could hop in and enjoy it. It's very sci-fi, it's very, like, disconnected from, I guess, most people. Because in Genshin, it's Mondstadt, which is like, I guess, English Knights, it's Britain. I guess if you really want to push it, maybe Germanic castles, British castles, one of the two. But, you know, I feel like those are not the majority of the audience that's going to be playing it. But it's open for anyone. Anyone could really enjoy it because they're mixing in a lot of fantasy with it. Even in Star Rail, the first location was the space station. Heard of space station? It's very neutral. Anyone can enjoy space station. Now, the second location every Hoyo game is basically pandering to China. It's basically for their Chinese Asian audience because it's basically China. Zhangzhou Lufu is a big nod to China in Star Rail, and in Genshin, Liyue is basically China. There's a lot of Chinese themes, motifs, and things appealing for the Asians, especially on mobile. And it's sad because I think all gachas in general suffer from this. The graphics and the gameplay kind of suffers because these games have to eventually be put on mobile, but you know, they all suffer from that. It's not particular to Wuthering Waves. But either way, this is where Wuthering Waves, in my opinion, now this might be good for other people. This was a very big negative for me. For me to be invested in a gacha, I need to like the lore of the game, the story, the characters, and the gameplay. I think the gameplay of Wuthering Waves is really fucking decent. I'm not going to say great or good. It's very, I don't want to say too simplistic, but I feel like games like Genshin, obviously, because that's the main thing we're comparing it to, are kind of on a similar level, if not a little worse. I think Genshin might be a little under it, but I don't want to put Wuthering Waves too much above it. Now, there are elements in the game. Obviously, you have fire. I forgot what they're called here, but fire. This is called arrow. This is called Glacio. It's basically ice, right? Like, we know all the elements here, and obviously we have Electro here, this lovely lady's Electro, which I'm going to be rolling for later on in this video. But we have all these things here, but they don't necessarily matter. The only thing they matter for is if the enemy has certain resistances. Obviously, you don't want to hit an ice enemy with Glacio. You don't want to hit a fire enemy with fire. It's not going to do any damage. But aside from that, there's not really much that I've noticed. Now, again, maybe I'm not far enough into the late game, because I didn't really touch the late game too much yet. I kind of just beat the campaign and called it a day. But for the most part, the combat, the kits and the characters' kits are pretty good, but there's no real reactions. There's not too much depth to the characters themselves in terms of the systems. Now, the actual characters themselves, I kind of misspoke there, do have decent amounts of depth, and this is where, ironically enough, I heard 4 stars actually have more depth than 5 stars mostly. They're kind of more fun than some of the 5 stars, but to be fair, a lot of 5 stars are banner 5 stars, which aren't going to be too good moving forward. They're going to get power crept, and the only 5 star we really had on banner was General Jiang, which is not even on banner anymore, so I can't even show him, but it's basically Adult Zhao. But the other person we have on banner here is Yinlin, which, again, I'm going to be rolling for. But essentially, the combat isn't too bad. Compared to Genshin, I think it's really pick your poison. I think people can enjoy both. I personally do enjoy both, although I think Wuthering Waves is a little bit more simplistic. Now, Wuthering Waves has things above Genshin. I think the combat in Wuthering Waves is a lot more fun if you don't really care for reactions, if you don't care about manipulating elements. There's a lot of just base things you do in almost every combat that stick around. It's not really dependent on the enemy, unless the enemy is a boss type, because at that point you can do counterattacks. But there's things like counterattacks in the game, there's dodging, where you can dodge, and if you dodge an attack at just the right time, you get invulnerability, and it slows down time, and you can do a follow-up attack. All these things are pretty cool, and I'll admit the animations are really, really cool. I think they probably have a leg up on animations than Genshin at this point for some stuff. Genshin has really hype moments with their ults and stuff, but a lot of the game in Wuthering is really carried by the combat animations. I think they're really good. Again, they feel good. But overall, the combat isn't too crazy. Now, the characters really have to carry it with their kits. And the one negative I will say right now is Genshin has a lot more polish than this game. In general, in a lot of different ways, which hopefully will be revealed as I say more. But one of the biggest ways is the character trials. The character trials, I think, in this game are absolute shit. In Genshin, they're not too good either. I think the best character trials are kind of in Star Rail if we're comparing all the three. I think Star Rail's number 1. Genshin's sadly number 2, and then this is last. Because when you do the character trials, it is absolute fucking doo-doo. Like, they do not really explain to you the kit or whatnot. And I'll be honest, the main way you have to learn is by going to their kits here and actually reading. And another thing they have above Genshin is intro and outro skills. After you get enough energy in combat, you can do an intro skill where when you switch to another character, when they come in, they do something special. Sometimes it's very simple, like just doing damage. Other times it could be like something cool, like flipping them in the air. And as the game, matures, because it's still very early on, right? I'm being overly harsh because I'm comparing a game that just came out to a game that's been out for 4 fucking years. And already this game has some stuff above Genshin, right? It's not terrible. And there's there's outro skills. So when one character leaves, they provide some sort of a buff. Maybe they'll do damage, maybe they'll buff something. And then the next character that'll come in, they have their little special power that comes in. But the main thing that you have to do here, which is kind of shitty, is you have to read everything. Now, the Forte circuit, which is pretty much their passive, a lot of people's Forte circuits in the game so far are kind of the same. They usually have a bar that you have to fill up either through auto-attacking or using a skill or doing something, and then when you fill it up, something gets buffed or they go into a different form or whatnot. That's not always the case, but it's mostly the case for most of the characters that I've seen, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And again, this could be either solved, improved on, or completely changed in the future with future characters. But the one thing I hate is the way you just have to read everything and the way they explain it to you. The way you have to read and the way they explain it, as a person with very, very low reading comprehension, because I'm fucking stupid, I don't like reading all this because it'll throw back to other things, right? It's not super comprehensible. Obviously, if you read it, you should get it, but it's a difference from reading it and actually putting it into practice. So the main thing is, I have to read this. There's all these things here. First of all, it's like a block wall of text, right? Which isn't too bad. Some characters have it worse than others. but some of it's just a little hard to understand, and I have to actually practice the kit sometimes. Now, that could be a good thing depending on how much complexity you want, but I'm just scared it might not be good because one of the big reasons I think Genshin does live and thrive is because it's so casual, it's so easy. Not to say that's the best thing ever, it really depends on who you are, but the casuals make up the majority of us, and that's what makes money. So even though I don't mind rereading the kit and then learning it, it does feel good to learn it and feel like, oh, now I actually know what to do because there is depth to it. It's a little bit complicated to do sometimes. I don't want to say complicated, but it takes some time if you're stupid like me. And then the character trials do an absolute terrible job, at least normally. But in terms of everything else, like there's some trials where they actually do really well and they teach you, like they handhold you a lot, but that's only in very specific trials. For most of the 5-star trials and the 4-star trials you get from the banners, they really don't do that good. But anyway, moving on to more notes I wrote. So, the voice acting. This is something that was a big, big issue. I don't know if they rushed this thing. I don't know if they didn't have enough money. I don't know what kind of studio they are. Kuro Games is, I think, the people who makes this. Obviously, they're based in China. And already I didn't agree with them putting the Chinese story forefront in the first thing. It really, and this is me as an American player, I really did not like the story. So before we even get to the voice acting, the story itself really, I think, was lackluster. And I actually heard that they're looking for a new main story director as well. So either the person got fired or they need more help. I don't know. This is all alleged information. I haven't confirmed this. But I can tell you this from the story I played. A lot of it was kind of bad. And this kind of fits in with the voice acting because a lot of the voice acting was kind of bad too. And one of the main things I noticed was a lot of the voice actors, while they did do a pretty decent job, I don't want to shit on them too hard. The main issue that I had with a lot of the voice actors is they kind of sounded like they didn't speak English first because they had accents. Now, it's not that big of a deal, but it really kind of hurts to hear when they're speaking English and they mispronounce things. And it's not just mispronouncing things. You could hear that they're accented, the vocal range isn't too wide. A lot of the voice actors sound the same. And that's because I think they had to get voice actors who were bilingual with Chinese and English, and maybe they didn't have enough time because a lot of what they're saying from the campaign is Asian. A lot of it is Chinese. There's a lot of Chinese sounding names and stuff, and they're hard to pronounce, and they definitely did good with the accents because they obviously speak Chinese as well, but their English wasn't too good. Some characters are better than others, but the voice acting was not that good. The subtitles sometimes just didn't make sense that were on screen. Sometimes they were completely different from the characters. The game, like I said before, isn't as polished as Genshin. The game, sometimes the subtitles wouldn't match up. Sometimes the characters would just straight up stop talking in the middle of their dialogue, and I was like, oh shit, what the hell? Like, the subtitles weren't correct. The characters would just randomly stop talking, and I was like, okay, wow. The lip syncing was not that good. It's better than Genshin, because in Genshin they don't do it at all, or it's completely wrong, because they don't give a fuck. Star Rail's the best. This game, it's the middle ground. It's not that good. Sometimes it's okay, but a lot of the voices just kind of sounded really bad. And the worst one of them all is the main character almost. The main character and the main squad. Chisha is one of the main squad here, and I'll kind of show her off here too. So the main characters right here, they literally sound like ChatGPT made this. Like they put ChatGPT in here and like that's the person. And I really hate like shitting on voice actors because it's a hard job. It's not as easy as people think. Not that I would really know, but I don't like shitting on people for no reason. But God was the main character. Like the voice needs some work. It literally sounds like AI. There's barely any emotion. There's not really a wide range. It's really bad. Yang Yang, the other main character, a part of the main trio, is pretty okay. She kind of just sounds like she's always soft and sweet, which is alright. Chisha does probably the best out of all of them, but it's still not too great. But the main cast, ironically enough, is all not that good with their voice acting. And again, there's a lot of issues with like syncing, dialogue cutting out, subtitles not going. And the subtitles sometimes went off the screen where there's more that they're saying in their little section, and you could see the subtitle continues down, but you can't scroll. So it's just like very confusing. I didn't understand it. But the voice acting was really bad. That's one of the big negatives I have for the game. But like I said, as good as the game feels, there it is a little rough. And one of the main reasons I didn't play it at first, and one of the main reasons we have a lot of roles here, and especially we could pick our own 5-star, which I'm going to explain soon. I might honestly split this up into 2 videos. I don't even know, because this is going to go for a while. But one of the main things that is an issue is the game is very rough. The game still suffers from performance issues. They did get better, and obviously, they're not a multi-billion-dollar studio like fucking Hoyo is at this point. At least I don't think they are. But the game is very rough. Like, obviously, the game feels good. If you can actually play the game and the game runs well on your computer, great for you. But if it doesn't, and even for me in the beginning, there was a lot of FPS problems I had. Whenever I start the game, the first like time I move, it'll lag extremely crazy. And even with just bugs and stuff, there's a lot of times where my camera sensitivity just went to like 0, it reset for no reason, then it would go back to normal. A lot of times, even during combat, my camera would focus in on a random spot just for no reason, and I couldn't get it to move. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? So there's obviously a lot of bugs, but those are going to get ironed out. But the game feels rough, and especially performance-wise, a lot of people have been having issues. A lot of fucking issues. But that's something that's hopefully gonna get ironed out. But it's really bad right now. It's better than it was, and my computer is not bad, by the way. I'm a streamer. I would like to say full time, even though I do it for free. But my computer isn't bad. It's a little older now. I do need to upgrade it soon. But this game was actually the only game I've ever seen to overload my computer to the point where my drivers had to reset. Every so often when I was playing the game, I don't know if they didn't optimize it this well or there was memory leak or God knows what. But every so often I would hear beeping. It would be like beep, 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 beep. And I was like, what the fuck is that from? And I was like, there's nothing I have open anywhere else that could make that sound. It doesn't sound like a normal sound. And I searched it up, and other people are having this issue too. It's overloading the drivers to the point where they have to reset. That beeping is them resetting. And I was shocked because it happened a lot. It doesn't really happen anymore for the past couple days. I haven't really had it happen maybe once. So it definitely has gone better. But like, good freaking lord, it was terrible. But just to go through the notes here some more. The jumping in the game is really good too. So kind of back to the movement here. The jumping, you jump higher. You can actually use your glider just from a regular jump. You could do plunging attacks just from jumping. Again, the movement is just amazing. So I'm not going to linger on that too much more. So there's a lot of bugs. Okay, there's a lot of quality as well. So again, even though it's a lesser game than Genshin, probably money-wise, right? Even though Genshin, I don't know what they do with their money. They piss it away onto other games, which thankfully are better than Genshin. But there is a lot of cleanness to this game. Even though it's very buggy, it's very rough sometimes, especially in the menus and at least with the visuals when you're like going through training, tutorial and stuff. It looks pretty good. It doesn't look low quality for the most part. Even though sometimes it feels rough, it also looks pretty good. And at certain points, right, aside from the character trials, they do a very, very good job of explaining things. There was one moment, and I'll show you the moment, where we have something called the data bank. This is kind of something similar to world level, kind of, but not really. There's a lot of stuff they do copy off Genshin, especially with how they do their dailies, their battle pass, all that jazz. But there's a lot of stuff that's unique to the game too. And one of the things is the data bank where you collect echoes. And that's something I'll go into probably right after this. But one of the main things was I didn't understand how this worked. I didn't understand. I know base drop rate. I don't know enhance, this, and that, right? So I clicked this, and this is here for most of the game. This is here for most of the menus. And this tells you a lot of what you wanted to know. And when I read this, it made a lot more sense. And there's a lot of other stuff in the game. There's a lot of other menus there where they have that, and it really does explain a lot, and it's really helpful. So again, I don't know why they just didn't do the character trials well, but everything else is explained very decently well if you want to learn it. It's really, really good. But let's see what else. So the gameplay loop. So I talked about the combat being like pretty okay, maybe slightly above Genshin, slightly tied, because Genshin has a lot of elemental reactions which are cool, but this game has a lot of just actual combat mechanics that are probably better and cooler. So again, I would rate this game a little bit better in terms of combat than Genshin, even though there's no reactions with the elements, at least yet. But one of the biggest gameplay loops of this game is finding what the enemies are called, which are tacit discords, and the whole game is sound themed, which is pretty cool too. But the gameplay loop of the game is finding enemies, killing them, and getting their echoes. Echoes are basically the equivalent of artifacts, and while some things are better and worse with them, I think one of the biggest, coolest thing is you could just get artifacts from the overworld. Now, obviously, there's little, I don't want to call them domains because they are still in the overworld, but there's little areas you could go and activate them to kind of basically do a tacit Discord domain and just get echoes. So it's not like you can't spend this game's equivalent of resin to get them. And one big negative for this game that Genshin shares is there's no reserve system. Star Rail has it. Everyone needs to have it. If they don't have it, that's just terrible, and I think they all need to be like smacked over the head. But sadly, this game doesn't have a reserve system for its wave plates. And wave plates, which is the resin in this game is used for almost everything where you're gonna run out fairly quickly. Like almost every resource that you really need needs resin, and you don't get that much of it. Thankfully, you get as much as Star Rail. You get like 240, I think, max. But my dear lord, like, is it not enough? You need a lot more, and they do give you obviously like resets on the resin. But again, you're gonna go through those pretty quickly if you actually want to progress in the game. Like, my god. But you know, the gameplay loop feels very good. It feels very rewarding. Again, one of the main things I did was I barely played the story at first because I was exploring the world and I was just finding different enemies to kill because when you get their echoes, you can actually use those echoes in combat. Aside from providing stat buffs like extra damage, defense, HP, crit rate, crit damage on the substats, which you have to buy, but it's not as bad as I thought. The main thing I like is that every enemy can become an echo and you can use them, even the bosses. And I was like, okay, that's really novel. That's really cool. So a lot of the early game I spent trying to level up my little gourd, my little oh god, what the fuck was it called? Let me check. It was called the data bank. I tried for a long time to level up my data bank because it gave me a lot of extra stuff. It boosted the drop rate for the echoes, and then it gave me more sprint. And just getting these enemies and seeing them and using them in combat and seeing their buffs, because there's a lot of randomness to the enemies. Again, they're artifacts. They have random rules, random main stats, substats. So you're going to be farming them a lot. But in the beginning, it's an absolute treat to do, and it's very, very fun. And I really like it. I think it was such a smart idea. It's so unique. It's so good. I really, really liked it. The theme of the game is pretty cool too, right? The whole theme is like sound based. The colors are pretty good. There's a lot of decent scenery mixed in. There's a lot of places where when I went, I was like, wow, these graphics are really good. I think aside from having a different theme and color palette than Genshin, it still holds up well, and it's actually at certain times very, very beautiful in the game. Now, let's see what else I wrote here. So again, it's rough around the edges, right? The login screen even, and you could tell this is where like they don't have as much polish as Genshin games do, or sorry, Hoyo games do. When I'm on the login screen, what ends up happening is before it actually logs me into the game, the volume is blasting at max because I obviously adjusted it to be lower because the normal volume is blowing on my eardrums. But until it logs me in, which takes a little bit, the volume is normalized. And it's like, holy shit, this fucking hurts. And then whenever I exit the game, it logs me out of the game to the point where I have to log back in. And it's so fucking annoying. I'm like, why? These things could and hopefully will be fixed, but it's like, holy shit, it's so bad. So, like I said, more notes here. The character trials and characters could be done a lot more better, a lot more interesting. The VA for a lot of them is really rough. They really do sound like they're like mainly Chinese and they're trying for English as well. And I don't want to like shoot them down and say they're terrible, but it's really fucking bad. Like it really is. A lot of people agree too, from my chat at least. So a lot of the things that they're trying to do, they're trying to seem professional and big. They don't have the Hoyo, spice. They don't have the Hoyo level of polish, but they're definitely trying to do that. And again, they're trying to copy Hoyo in a lot of ways, and they do it decently, right? But they're not Hoyo, so you could definitely see the roughness. Now, again, I talked about the camera. I have that here. The camera sucks. It's buggy. So the sensitivity gets fucked. Sometimes it zooms in on something for no reason. But one of the biggest thing, and this is where there's some quality of life changes that, excuse me, again, Star Rail implemented that I wish would be in every gacha, but thankfully, in this game, you don't, unlike Genshin, you don't have to go to somewhere specific and hand in your dailies. Genshin needs to get rid of that shit. I don't know why they don't. In this game, you can just do it from a menu. Thank God. It's basically the same as Star Rail. Now, the dailies kind of suck, and they did improve them very, very quickly. I still don't think they're perfect, but they're a lot better than they were. The dailies used to be level up a resonator. A resonator is the characters you use. You have to level up a resonator, and I was like, wow, okay, what happens if I don't have any more or I max them out? I literally can't do that part of the daily. And they give you some options to do. They obviously give you more than you need. But Jesus Christ, was it like really bad in the beginning? Now it's a lot better. Hopefully they change it even more so, just like Star Rail did. But the dailies really sucked. Crafting. To do crafting, you have to go to a very specific area in the city I'm in now, and it's really annoying when you have to do that. I wish you could just do it anywhere. There's no reason for it not to be done anywhere. It's dumb. And there's a little annoyance that I have too when clicking on the map doesn't teleport you to the nearest point. In Star Rail it does. And I didn't want to bring up Star Rail too much, but I'm comparing them to Hoyo, and I don't remember if Genshin does the, but basically the teleporting is also a little annoying. These are just little tidbits here, but so far from what I noticed as well is leveling the characters is also pretty fucking boring. In Genshin and Starro, when you level the characters, you unlock special like passives or abilities that come later. Mostly passives, actually. Now that I think about it, but these passives are very, very important to the character's kit. They unlock a lot more, and they're very big milestones. Similar to in Wuthering Waves now, however, with the combat system with the elements really don't matter too much. And it's the same thing with leveling your character. Leveling your character just kind of gives you a stat boost. It doesn't really unlock any new powers or anything, which, as far as I could tell, it doesn't do that. Maybe I'm wrong, but it really is kind of boring to level the character. But there's good moments in the campaign, but overall the story of the campaign, like I said, is very, very It's whatever. It's mostly for Asian people, and even then, it's really not too interesting either. There are good moments, and the campaign definitely heats up later on, but the voice acting really degraded it. The story just isn't too interesting in general. They really do a decent job of trying to glaze the main character, and that's the whole thing with these gotchas. They try and make you the big main fantasy, and they do a decent job of it, but for the most part, it's kind of like it's just a whatever campaign, and I don't really know where they're gonna take the story next. And I really hope that they take it to a new region with a new theme that's not Chinese. Although I really feel like the whole game's theme, or a big majority of the story's theme, is going to be Chinese. And at that point, I really think that for at least me, I don't know about for most other people, but for at least me and probably some other people, it's going to be a little off putting because this isn't catered towards me, and it doesn't have to be catered towards me. I like neutral catered stuff. I like stuff that's not real, obviously. We're playing gotchas, right? Fantasy games. But I like stuff where it's like, it's really neutral. Like, I wouldn't really care if stuff was American. I wouldn't really care if stuff is Asian. I wouldn't really care if stuff is African. I don't want any of that. I want completely new creative things. I'm not saying it doesn't need to be based off something, but this is very, very obviously themed and pushed for a certain audience, and that audience is not me. But aside from that, the end of the story. Oh yeah. Oh god. Let me talk about this. So this is the last note I have here. The end of the story was so fucking annoying. So again, the story is culminating. It's a little confusing here and there. It gets a little convoluted, but nothing crazy terrible. It's not like Genshin where a lot of the lore is hidden away in like books and stuff. Maybe it is for this game. I don't know. I don't really care for the lore, and that's one of the issues because again, it's not catered to me. But one of the big things is in the final missions where you're going to fight the big boss. One of the big best things they do is they let you use a lot of the characters you meet in the story while you're fighting. That's something Genshin almost never does aside from character quests. In the main story here, you can use the characters that you're with. They let you use them a little bit, and it's very much appreciated. You get to try them out. It's very nice. However, in the final mission, it was so fucking hand holding. I felt like I was doing another tutorial. And I was like, what the hell? I'm at the final end of the game. I know how to do certain things. You could show me a new mechanic, sure, but show me it once or twice and then I could do it myself. But oh my god, it felt so handholdy. The story is like not that good anyway. And the end really felt like another tutorial with how much they held your hand with stuff. I was like, holy shit. They don't even let you use your own characters for the end, which I guess is good. It could be good, it could be bad. But the main thing was it was just like, oh my god, it felt so fucking handholdy. Like it was actually terrible. It was so bad. It was so bad. And the story's not too good either. But that final mission really got me pissed off. But the story is like decently interesting at times. It's not terrible, but for the most part it's kind of like whatever. But that's pretty much it for my opinions on Wuthering Waves. It did surprise me at first, and I think it does have some things above Genshin. Again, the combat is kind of tied, if not a little bit better. The theme of the game, the whole visuals of the game, I think is not bad either. I think they're also pretty good. It really is a pick your poison sort of thing. I hope, and obviously the game hopefully will improve as time goes on, but it's definitely not a Genshin killer. Now, the main thing they did that, we'll never know this for sure, but the main thing I can appreciate is that they might have lit a little bit of a fire under Genshin's ass, where they basically, these are very coincidental things. I don't know if this is specifically from Wuthering Waves, but Genshin is finally adding in a new late game activity that's permanent, hopefully, I think, and they increased the resin cap. It's nowhere near what it should be, aka they just need to copy Star Rail's one, but they're never going to do that. But you could kind of hopefully attribute them improving the game slightly after never improving it at all in ways that matter to Wuthering Waves potentially. But is Wuthering Waves going to kill Genshin? I doubt it. Could I see Wuthering Waves lasting? I honestly don't know, because I've actually heard a lot of people also not liking the game, because again, it's sort of a weird dichotomy. There's not too much depth to the game, but at the same time, some of the things are not explained well, and the things that matter, like the characters' kits, they're sometimes a little bit too complicated. And if things are a little bit too complicated, a lot of people are stupid, like me, and they don't care and they just give up. They're like, okay, I'm going back to like herder caveman fucking stupid idiot Genshin, because it's simple, right? And they know it. But the game has potential, but it's definitely not a Genshin killer. I was very right and happy I'm right to assume that this shit is not going to kill Genshin. It was definitely overhyped from what I heard, at least. It's not a terrible game. It definitely has potential, but it's really rough around the edges. It's not that good. It's not that bad either. It has some shining little gems, but they just need to work on it. But like, dear Lord, I wouldn't be surprised if this game didn't last long, but I wouldn't also be surprised if it got really good as well. It's sort of in a middle point. And again, it's the start of the game. We can't be too judgmental of it, but it's kind of whatever. There's a lot of good things, there's a lot of bad things, which hopefully I've outlined in a semi-decent way. But either way, this video is over 40 minutes, so I'm definitely going to split the rolling into another video. But this is basically going to be it. I hope everyone enjoyed, and please watch me at Twitch TV/Tecnics channel. And please tell me your opinions of Wuthering Waves 2. What do you like? What do you dislike? I'm curious to hear the opinions of the populace, of the plebeians. Anyway, I hope everyone enjoyed. E.